West Tigers Faithful, episode 55, coming to you live from wherever you listen to us. And now is probably the time for that general plug: Spotify, Apple, etc. Please like and subscribe if you're on our social medias or not on our social medias. Please connect with us. Please share with us. These episodes are pre-recorded. We would love for you to send us questions, to interact with us. We are very, very appreciative for our community. As you can see, there are three people here. I'll get to the third man in a little bit, but Joe McCord, as always, is here. How are you, Mac?
Very good, very good. Starving for some West Tigers football. It was a rough weekend, and it's going to be a rough weekend again. I at the end of last episode was ranting about the fact that we got the round one bye when you hit the exit music. So I guess I can just start from that. What a joke! What kind of crap is that? Like, is that 2 years in a row that they did that to us? 2 years in a row that they did that to us.
Twice in
Do you think?
three.
Wasn't I thought it was two in a row. Regardless, I reckon it was because Richo didn't want to go to Vegas, so they're punishing him. And I reckon that's why Camp's been so pro going to Vegas, because he's like, this is the only way we're going to go around one game is if we actually go to Vegas. They're going to just like keep doing this to us every year unless we go to Vegas.
Not the fact that there's 18 teams coming into the comp, but anyway, we'll talk about that later. As you will see, there is a third man here. He is a former media manager of the West Tigers, and even though there's a whole new feeling of a new era and a new dawn around the club, we're actually going to look backwards before we turn forwards when we actually play a game next week. I'm not going to pump his tires up too much because he is my boss, but I think it's fair to say that West Tigers content and media output has gone off a cliff since he's left. His name is Dan Talintyre. He's us today, and he is our first guest of 2026 to West Tigers Faithful. Hello there, mate. How are you?
Hello, guys. Thank you for having me. It's very kind. I think you're potentially doing a little bit of disservice on a few fronts there, but no, thank you. Very glad to be with you, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Thanks, mate.
Let that be a
So
lesson to you, Aaron. Don't suck up to your boss, because it didn't even
Always
it
suck
didn't
up
even
to your
work.
boss. 101.
He frowned. He's frowning when you did it. He didn't like it. It doesn't work. You got to be direct, and you got to be earnest with your boss.
Well, I have told him in the past that the content output has gone off a cliff in the meantime. But let's go back to the very start, mate. 2013, I think it was, that you first turned up at the club, and you departed in 2021. But for the majority of your stay there, you were mainly the media manager. Is that correct?
Yeah, probably about half of it. So I sort of turned up the last few weeks of 2013, heading into the 2014 season. Did like a lot of social media stuff there, and then started to pick up a little bit more website stuff, and then some people moved on, and I started heading up the department and sort of taking over media management stuff. Sort of 2017, 18, 19, somewhere sort of around there, picking up lots of different pieces, and then sort of leading that team from 2018, 2019 onwards, sort of through to COVID, and then moved on and went to head office and worked at the NRL after that. But yeah, a couple of different roles at the Tigers, and a lot of them sort of pretty intrinsically involved in the media. Yeah.
Wonderful. We'll get to a few of the yarns in a little bit, but talk to me about the actual role of a media manager for an NRL side. Now, I know at West Tigers, I'm sure there's plenty of crisis communications involved, and face saving and relationship protection, and reputation protection. But talk to me through sort of what the day to day, month to month churn sort of look like.
Yeah, and I think you can pretty mark those in season and like post season and off season, right? So like in season is pretty structured, and it's almost easier in a way in season because you just sort of know what your schedule is, you know what your games are, so therefore you know you're going to have media sessions. Like the NRL has rules in place around how many you've got to have, how many players you've got to have up, sort of the frequency, the visibility, all that sort of stuff, and those are consistent across every team. So that's sort of relatively straightforward in a way. Once you hit the season, it's just following a schedule, and you sort of build that out, and you hide players that you need to hide, and you put out Chris Lawrence all the time if you need to. But like you sort of just get into the routine of what you need on that sort of stuff. And then I think the off season's a little bit more flexible, right? A lot of the off season is when you're sort of trying to plan bigger content days, trying to do some more of that sort of stuff. And it's relationship management too, right? Like you can have your media schedules planned and stories that you want to try and push, and you sort of know what's going on, and you sort of have a bit of a sense of things that are coming most times. It's pretty rare that you get like properly blindsided, like something gets published that you don't know about. And I think that's when you're doing the job well is when you do know when stuff's coming. It's not necessarily being able to control it a lot of the time, but being able to know what's coming and being able to sort of plan and pivot as best you can off that is sort of what most of the media managers will try and do. And yeah, you're going to try and have good relationships with the journalists and producers and sort of shows where you can, so that you can do that to the best of your ability.
Which I know you certainly do maintain those relationships with your fantasy football comps and the rest. But I remember you once telling me that getting a call on a Sunday or a Saturday night from Buzz compared to a Saturday night call from one Danny Weidler was typically a little bit more palatable. How did like the journalism junket, whether it be News Corp 9, etc., is 24 hours these days. We have so many different programs on so many different networks. Rugby league is very much now a 24-hour news cycle that now doesn't slow down. Talk me through how you navigated some of those phone calls and dealt with, some of those dilemmas, particularly at a club like the Tigers.
Yeah, you're on your phone a lot, right? Like that's the job in a lot of ways. And I think too, sometimes it's not even just about the call that you get from the journalist. It's then the call that you make to CEO or coach or head of football or player or whatever you need to do, and sort of the calls that come back, and you're trying to navigate that. You're trying to also be really respectful too, that like you are not the most important person in the organization. Like you have access to the CEO and you have access to the coach and players, but you don't sit at that level. And so it's recognizing that and being okay with that too, right? Like they don't have to tell you stuff, that there's going to be stuff they keep from you, and that's their job, and that's totally fine. Yeah, I think sometimes it depends on the severity of what the call is. Sometimes it's, hey, I've heard this as a player you're interested in signing, and those stories happen and whatever. And sometimes they're, um, hey, we've got a photo of this. And those calls are a little bit different. I think too, the other thing you referenced the Danny, like Danny's a really good guy. I think you don't want to be the story. And so I think the ones that I ever got sort of most worried about is when I knew they were involving me in some capacity. Because like you don't want to be in the news. You don't want to, it's not about you. You want it to be about the club. You want it to be positive. And so the last thing you want is to them to be talking about you positively or negatively, right? Like it's not something you want, because you just want the focus to be on the club. Yeah.
For sure. So obviously, Mac, I'll bring you in a sec, but how do you look back on your time there? Obviously, you cut your teeth in what is, a professional sporting organisation, or at least looks to be.
Yeah.
And you certainly achieved a lot there, and learned so much. But I guess looking back now in hindsight, how do you feel about everything that went on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Like the biggest thing you got to come back to, I think, now with one or two more grey hairs, but also like 16-year-old Dan would have like bitten your hand off for that opportunity, right? Like I grew up a Tigers fan. My grandma grew up a Balmain fan. She cried when I told her that I was working at the Tigers. I got to take my dad into the change room at Leichhardt. So like things that I know meant a lot to other people sort of was really cool. So sort of looking back on that, you're pretty excited by those opportunities. And there's a few moments that I can still really clearly picture and thinking like, wow, this is a really special place to be. The team bus in Melbourne after we beat Melbourne on Billy Slater's 300th. Like we won 10-8. The penalty count was like 18-8 against us or something stupid. Melbourne bombed about 27 tries. Brooksy tried to punch Billy Slater. Like just so many, like that team bus is a night that I genuinely like won't forget, because there's just a buzz. And like, I'm sure that's what the teams that win the comp and all that sort of stuff feel. And so like, yeah, you look back, I didn't get a finals game in 9 years of working there. And so you look back frustrated because you're like, man, we could have done some really cool stuff. I know the things we had planned if we beat Canberra at Leichhardt, or I know the stuff we had planned if we beat Cronulla at Leichhardt when Robbie came back. Like there's so many things that were coming the next week that would have blown people's minds that you don't get to do. So that sort of stuff's hard, but ultimately, like you're super grateful. You meet lots of good people. And ultimately, I think, like you talked about, whether you want to call it disunity, whether you want to call it chaos, whether you want to call it a lack of professionalism, like that's for subjective people's opinions, right? But like the hard times make you really good at your job, I think. I think if you're winning every week and it's just positive story after positive story, you're like, man, I'm killing it. But the reality is like when it's tricky, that's what makes you really good at your job. And that's when you feel like a real sense of satisfaction sometimes, when you've had a hard day, but you've come out of it with people being protected or people really appreciating the work you've done. Yeah, that's a sort of satisfaction that comes from it.
Pressure makes diamonds and iron sharpens iron. Mac, go on.
Thank you, Ronnie Palmer. Yeah. Yeah.
I work in like marketing, and so I think in KPIs, think in numbers, and as a media manager at the West Tigers, I must ask, the West Tigers must be, one of the more click-worthy, I suppose, like franchises for probably the
Yeah.
wrong reason, right? Like, how do you find the balance between like the part of your role that's about actually getting eyeballs, getting actual interest in the product with the, the sentiment, like the fact that the Tigers maybe not performing so well? Like I know in most media roles, the objective is to get website clicks, to get, like
Yeah.
followers on social media. How did you find it? Did you at any time like find yourself actually like, taking advantage of the fact that the team were like doing poor, or was there always this like overwhelming like sense that it had to be about positivity? Was the PR side of your role more important than that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the positivity is there, right? Your job is to try and sell the reason for people to show up the next week, the reason for people to click on something, the reason for people to buy a jersey. I think, weirdly looking back, I think the fact that everyone thought every year it was going to be different, I take a lot of pride in, because that's us doing a good job at conveying the positivity and conveying hope, right? I think when it comes to sort of traffic and engagement and those sort of things, I think one of the big things was realizing, like, I don't have any control over whether James Tedesco tears his ACL or not. I have no control over that. I have complete control over how we communicate it when it happens. And on the flip side too, like, sometimes if you're just looking at numbers, then like, yeah, the clubs that are winning are going to be doing massive numbers through the roof, because they want to watch the highlights. You don't want to watch the highlights of Canberra 66, West Tigers 6. Like, no one wants to watch that. So like, that's, you sort of trying to best sort of communicate with the hand you've been dealt. And I think it's looking at that fact of like, the Tigers can win and I can do a really bad job at my job by not having content ready, by not communicating well, by not having the stories and the PR spin and sort of getting caught up in the hype. And at the same time too, we can get absolutely flogged and I can kill it. And I can do a really good job at keeping people engaged when you've lost 7, 8 in a row, finding positive stories, like all that sort of stuff you get pride in. So I think you're forever balancing the PR with the traffic and engagement and the KPIs that come around that. But the biggest thing is to sort of separate, you don't have control over the product. And so it's trying to do the best job you can with the hand you've been dealt. Yeah, sometimes you wish it was a better hand. But that's out of your control, and you learn very quickly that it's out of your control, and you just sort of keep trying to move forward. And like you're involved in wins and losses, but like, the people intimately. And so it is different in a way of like, like someone like Luke Brooks. I have so much time for Brooksy. I got to know Brooksy really well over 10 years. And like, yeah, he'd have bad games. And yet, like, some of the stuff he had to handle, I've seen him in situations where like the way in which he's handled himself in those situations, like, people will never get to see. And yet he showed incredible restraint or incredible strength or character. And like, you're really proud of him for that in a way too. So I think, you're forever also trying to manage real people. They're not just players and coaches. They're real people that you have to work with every day.
So obviously this is great, and obviously we as a bunch of marketers talking about this the entire time. But unfortunately, we have an audience of about 700 that like to talk football.
I don't want to talk about the time that I turned the social comments off and broke the internet. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah,
No, please talk about that. So much more interesting.
That was not a great night at work. That one might have got a few things wrong. Yeah.
Nah,
Actually,
the best.
before you go on already, can I? So you started there 2013, right?
Yeah, 2014 was my first full season. Yeah.
So you pretty much were like a rookie at the same time as Brooksy and Mitch Moses and stuff. Like you came in at the same time that all of those guys. So you were pretty much like there for the entirety of Luke Brooks's like West Tigers career. It must have been like you meant, it sounds like you developed quite a good rapport with him.
Yeah,
It must
absolutely. Yeah.
it must be difficult, like when you're on the inside, like being friends with these players who, like, their lives are lived in public, and especially at a club like the West Tigers where it was so much to the negative all of the time. Um, do you have any, like, particular stories of like experiences where you had to kind of like actually weather that storm by actually getting around them, or like was there any times where you actually like felt like that it was potentially going to cause you any kind of like mental upset or anything like that? Because like I know, like in my experience, like I find it difficult to kind of separate my job from my personal life, and for you it must have been extraordinarily challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think anybody that says that they separate this stuff from their life well, is probably lying, or they're much better at their job than I was. Yeah, I think there's one thing in there, like your friends, but not really. Like they're your colleagues, and like
Mhm.
you have a relationship with them, but like you're not friends. There'll be some that you get to know better than others for sure. Whether that's you're at the same life stage, or you've got maybe you know them outside of different things. Like it might be someone that you've met in different circles or whatever. And so there's people that you will get along with better than others, or people that'll stay at the club longer. And so you get to know them better. Um, I think, yeah, Luke's a really good example. Like, I think, yeah, he's a very different guy at 30 than what he was at 20. And I don't think that's unfair to say to him. But that's everyone, right? You just grow up and you're in different life stages, and you have a partner and have kids. And I think with Luke, I think it was more seeing him. Yeah, he just copped it. And yeah, sometimes
Mm.
he'd play well and sometimes he wouldn't, but he also had 7 coaches and 6 heads of football in 9 years. And usually a different attacking coach every single year as well. Like, and different halves partners and like all of that sort of stuff that can lead to instability. I think, um, there's a moment in everyone's favorite West Tigers documentary on Fox, Tales from Tiger Town. There's a moment, another great career move.
Were you
There's
an
a
executive
moment,
producer?
yeah, I have a title credit. Yeah, Fox did most of it though. There's a moment actually after we lost the Tommy Raudonikis game at Leichhardt. Obviously the Cowboys are like flogging us. Tigers come back with 4 tries in 12 minutes. James Roberts scores, and I think if that try is allowed to stand, there's 10 minutes to go, and the Tigers are going to win, and they're all over them. And that try gets taken out for obstruction, and the Cowboys end up holding on. And the last kickoff, Brooksy knocks it on. And after the game, there's a bit on the sideline where Brooksy needs to do an interview with Fox. And it's part of the doco, and you see like he just is like not in a good headspace, and where like it's Leichhardt and you're a meter from the fence, and some of the
Mm.
stuff that this woman is saying to him about his partner, about his brother, about his mum. Like the dude is about to cry and also want to like jump the fence at the same time. And it's like the restraint that he shows in that moment to stand there, to cop it, to catch his breath, and then to do an interview with Fox about how he lost the game, where a player that will go down in West Tigers history, Tommy Raudonikis, we were supposed to honour and we lost, and Brooksy was wearing his jersey. Like the weight to carry all of that, I think you end up, that's the sort of stuff you get really proud of. When you talk about like getting around them, like it's more just like trying to pump them up and be with them in that moment. Like they know what they need to do. It's their job. You're with them in the same way that you are your other colleagues when they're having good days and bad days. But I think too, it does go the other way too, right? And some of my favorite moments are players checking in when you don't need to. Luke Garner called me in the middle of COVID because he was like, "Hey, I'm just calling some staff to see how they're going," and so like you don't forget that. No, there'd be times Josh Allier or Michael Cheekham would just message and check in, and that's like, "Hey, how's your work day going?" And so that's all like stuff that's pretty cool. And like there's lots of examples of that I can go into, and um, we'll probably talk about it more. But then that's coaches as well, right? Like you get pretty close because you're speaking to them pretty frequently, and so you get pretty close with the coaches as well. Yeah.
Speaking of, you mentioned how many coaches that Brooksy had in his time, and by extension, directors of football and CEOs. Obviously, from our perspective and looking at it externally, it was really hard for the club to find any sort of rhythm through those years. The only time that it sort of felt like that it was working was sort of under Madge midway through 2020, and then the floor sort of fell out from underneath him, and the whole walking on eggshells saga kicked off from there. How hard is it to be in that building internally and deal with that instability? And I know that obviously you weren't directly involved in the football department, but you worked in a club where obviously CEOs and stuff was sort of going in and out. JP was like obviously there for a long time, but you know, he had that issue in 2019. Like, talk to me about how that, you know, sort of festers and manifests day to day.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing to call out, and it's genuinely not a lie, is that you don't see the instability internally. I can remember the day, it was like 2014, like there was the back page of the paper, the Robbie, Nick Potter fallout. We played the
Oh,
Dragons, we'd lost. And like Mick walked into the office next day and everyone was like weirdly quiet. And Mick's like, don't worry, guys, I'm still here. And it's like, that was partly Mick. He just took the Mickey out of everything. Pun not intended. But like, I think you just sort of like, you don't feel the instability as much. In comms roles, you know it's there. And so you know that coaches are under pressure in the way that they also know they're under pressure. But that's the job. That is sport. It's public facing and it comes with pressure. And so I think while you don't feel the pressure, because I'm not on a contract in the way that they are, yeah, it's a little bit there, but really not to the extent that I would think people think it is. You're just getting on and doing your job, and you know the work that's being done. You can see the coaches are good people. I think it's pretty rare. I'm sure there's circumstances where coaches have been flogs, and like genuinely none of the ones that I had to deal with work. So I never saw it from that end. It's more, I guess, probably you just feel, yeah, a little bit frustrated for them that they're not getting the results they want, because of whatever circumstances are going on. Yeah.
Summer of 2019, in the middle of a bushfire, there was a pretty massive saga that played out in the papers that involved West Tigers' pursuit of one Latrell Mitchell. That place fell flat, and we know how that all ended and where he is now. But give us a bit of an inside knowledge about what went down.
Oh, and like, I don't know much anything else that hasn't been reported by this point, right? Like, as in a lot of it's already out there. Like, I think it was pretty obvious that, um, people had gone out to meet Latrell, and there was, it certainly seemed like there was a growing optimism it would be happening. I think the thing to remember in comms jobs is you usually get a really short window of like, this has happened to we need to announce it. And so you're forever like planning in the background of what you'll do. Like there'd be part of that that the Tigers ended up signing Adam Dewey. And like genuinely, I can remember Justin called me into his office at like 3:20. Hey, Adam Dewey is coming here for 4:00 and we're announcing it at 4:30. And you're like, oh, okay, awesome. I'll just put together all of that content in an hour. That'll be awesome. Call my wife and tell her I'll be coming home late. So I think the Latrell stuff, yeah, I think it's pretty well reported, right? Like they'd clearly gone and met with him, and there was certainly some confidence, I guess, that it would translate. But then I think you start to know pretty quickly, right? When there's silence, that usually is not a good thing. And again, you go back to like Corey Thompson's a really good dude. And so seeing Corey and all of that is a tricky situation because you're like, well, you're clearly a fan favorite and you're playing good fullback and people don't want Latrell on massive money. But I think too, and I think it's why I like look at this team now and I love the signing of Jerome Luai. Like there's not an amount of money that's too much to pay Jerome Luai because superstars are rare. And so like pay them. Because what's the alternate that you play someone not as good? There's only so many good halfbacks in the comp. So if you can get one, go and get one. It doesn't matter what the cost is. And I look at Latrell at what he was at that moment. And I think it's pretty fair to say he probably hasn't delivered at fullback on what I think people probably thought he would deliver coming out of the Roosters. But he's a superstar and he only needs to touch the ball 10 times a game and he can score 2 tries and set up 2 more. And so if you can go and get Latrell, go and get Latrell. If you can go and sign Payne Haas, go and sign Payne Haas. It's Mitch Barnett at the moment is going to be looking for a Sydney club. Like, go and sign him. Figure out the ramifications of it later. But I think when good players are available, there's not that many elite players that can truly make a difference. And so, yeah, I think it was cool that we were close to signing Latrell. It didn't happen. You know, you got Corey Thompson and Adam Dewey, two really good blokes. Like, you just sort of move on, and it just sort of happens, right? But yeah, Latrell one was a funny one. It sort of became public pretty quickly in what was pretty common West Tigers practice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on that topic, I can say, like, even back then, like, I had a pretty good mate who was one of the sponsors, and he told me that it was signed. So I can take some accountability for telling everybody that it was signed as well. You seem like you keep talking about good dudes. Like, so it sounds like you like have a pretty optimistic view of pretty much everybody at the West Tigers.
Or I'm just
Aside
not going
from
to tell you who I don't.
well, I was about to say, aside from Robbie Farah, were there any like wankers? Like, were any of the players like just straight up?
Can I say, actually,
yeah, go
the
on.
thing on Robbie, right? Robbie's I saw two really different Robbies. Robbie, when he
Yep.
came back the second time, was one of the best people I've ever met. I've not seen someone who cared more about the club and who would put the club above himself. I think there was a quote on the wall at the old West Tigers building at Concord Oval which said, "Mental toughness is doing the right thing for the team, even when it's not the right thing for you." It's an old Bill Belichick quote. I think a lot of people will do the right thing for the team when it also suits them. And I think the biggest thing I saw about Robbie when he came back was that he would do the right thing for the team, whether it suited him or not. And he would show up and he had an appreciation for being back in the Tigers colours, and probably part of it, and you don't want to speak for the guy who's probably the best West Tigers player there's been, in my opinion. And that's no disrespect to Benji. I think Robbie just embodied everything you want the club to be. And I think that's rare that you sort of end up having this real appreciation of the club. So yeah, I think, like, I know your question was meant to be a dig at Robbie, but second stint Robbie is genuinely, and like hand on heart, like genuinely one of the best people I've met, because he had an appreciation and he loved being back at the Tigers, and that was really cool to see. And like, Robbie is a winner. Like, some people are winners by their talent, and Robbie was clearly talented, but Robbie's also the most competitive person I've ever met in my life. And it's the biggest difference between him and Benji. It's not that Benji's not competitive. Of course he is. Benji has a natural talent. Robbie will run you over to win for sure.
Well, I mean, there's a famous story about Robbie Farah and Bo Ryan like wrestling in their apartment and like just holding each other down for like several hours. I just want to put on the record, I was joking.
I know. I just wanted to be on record. Robbie's a good dude too. No, and like some players are challenging, right? Like, I think the biggest thing too is, right, they're often going through stuff. Like, I look at I like even the high profile ones that people say they flamed out, right? Like, I don't know, like signings like Joey Leather maybe didn't quite work, and like Joey was also going through a lot of stuff at home, man, and like trying to deal with family in Canberra during COVID lockdown when you're up here and you got young kids, and like, yeah, you got to handle it, and that's life, and you're responsible for your actions and all of that sort of stuff. But I think the biggest thing you realize is that people are going through so much more than probably what you give it credit for. I've got a 2-year-old at the moment. Some days are exhausting, and I'm turning up and sitting in an office chair. Like, I can't imagine doing that with 3 kids when you've got a wife who you have to call and be like, "Hey, video ran long and we're going to be another hour and a half. And so you're going to have to do daycare pickup." Like, that's never going to make the paper, but that's the stress that people live with. And they know what they sign up for, sure. But that's also part of it, right? And so I think, yeah, players are responsible for their actions, but they're often also going through a lot more than what people recognize. And that's probably a lesson for everyone, right? Like, as in, it's not just players, like everyone around you is going through stuff you don't know about. So probably give people a little bit more grace is not a bad rule of thumb.
Good call, mate. One successful team that was West Tigers affiliated that I know that you speak about quite fondly was the 2015 National Youth Competition outfit. Coached by Noddy or coached by Willie Peters?
Really good question. I think 2015 was Brett Kamali, I think. Yeah.
Talk me through some fond memories of watching that side go round, some of the players that were a part of it, and some of the ones that you thought were going to be 300 game Origin reps.
Oh, I can tell you, I remember the day we played the Bulldogs in round 4 and Lamar Lealavave was a late inclusion. Mate, Lamar Lealavave is the best under-20s player I have ever seen play for West Tigers. He was a freak. Left edge back rower, played outside Tamari. Like, my God, was like, this is it. We've got our insert David Fafita. I mean, Fafita wasn't playing by that point, but do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I thought he was going to be. Because he just looked unstoppable. That left edge of, Tigers under 20s, Mania Charrington, Hooker, Lamar Lealavave, Watson Halita, John Ogden, John Towie, some of the greats there. Matt Lodge in the front row. They're playing 20s, right? So, you learn very quickly that most 20s players don't correlate to first grade in what you think is going to be awesome. But that was a pretty good team. And I think part of the cool part about working for the club is you are there at under 20s games. And we took real pride in the way that we covered 20s and State Cup. And I think that actually also made you really good at your job too, because you knew all these players inside and out. You knew the guys that were playing State Cup and, you get good relationships with them and they're far more chilled because there's 30 people at Campbelltown at 10 o'clock on a Saturday. But yeah, there's some good memories. Probably one of my favorite ones was when Andrew Webster was coaching the Tigers. He came up against some pretty challenging under-20s teams. There was a game, Nelson Asafa-Salomona's was one of his first 20s games. We played Melbourne at Campbelltown, and genuinely, the only time we could score points was when Nelson was off the field. And Nelson had come back on and Melbourne would just score points. And then probably the other one is an under-20s folklore hero who I know, Mick Campton and some people like that. Addison Demetrio was a front rower for Manly, who one day Manly had all these outside back injuries, and so they played him in the centres against the Tigers, and it was genuinely the most single-handedly impressive game I've ever seen someone have. I'm sure the numbers are out there, but it'd be 4 tries, 15 line breaks, and genuinely not an exaggeration. It was just freakish. But Addison Demetrio obviously never quite reached the heights in first grade. So yeah, you learn very quickly that these 20s teams they're good fun. And yeah, finals, it's finals, right? We weren't making the finals in first grade, so you get excited when they make the finals in 20s and State Cup and those sorts of things. But I do remember Brett Hodgson always used to say, the aim of the game is never to win the State Cup comp. And it's important to remember, right? You hit finals and you want these teams to win, but what you want more is for 4 good first graders to come out of it to be in the first grade team for next year. That's literally the only point of it. And so, yeah, winning's fun. And when you hit the finals, you want to win because it's good culture and all that sort of stuff. But what matters most is the development of players from reserve graders through to first graders, and then they stick, right? It's not to say Jareen Buller doesn't become a long-term first grader if he isn't held back in, 20s and State Cup that little bit longer, but you also don't know what that month does for his confidence and for his just getting used to preparation and all those sorts of things. It's an extra month, but if it buys you an extra 6 years of a, top 8 fullback in the comp, you'll take that in a heartbeat. And so I think that's the other really important thing to remember. There's, I'm sure we'll talk about Makasini, right? I think Makasini plays round 2. I think they're slightly mad if they don't. But also, I would be stunned if he plays every game this year because he's a kid. And if after 6 weeks he needs to go back and have 2 weeks playing State Cup because he needs to work on his carries out of yardage, then that might be what he needs to do, right? As in, what you want is players that have 10, 15 years careers. You want to win now, but you sort of have to balance that also with their development. Yeah.
Mac, anything before I jump into coach chat?
Well, I was actually going to ask about a coach. So you would have been there when Nathan Cleary was being discussed as potentially coming to the Tigers, and then it ended up with the other way, Ivan Cleary exiting. What was that experience like? Because that must have been quite a tumultuous month or 2.
Yeah, really tumultuous is a really good word, probably looking back. Yeah, Brent Reed went on Triple M and said Nathan was done, basically. And I got no idea whether it was or wasn't. That's what's reported, and Reedie's a pretty smart dude and wouldn't have said it if he didn't know it. Yeah, I think you look at the Tigers over the last 10, 12, 15 years, and I think the one little asterisk you have to give the club over all of the mistakes they have made is that they got one right and it got taken away from them and it wasn't their fault. And that's not to say that every decision since is perfect. It's just like they had Ivan, and he was under contract and then he left. And yeah, you can't blame him for wanting to go coach his son. I get all that. But it's also a hard one for the club then, who then have to find a coach. And you then have to, again, I go back to what I said at the start, you're trying to deal with the hand you've been dealt. That was really challenging. Sort of trying to like protect Ive too, because it's hard for him. And you're sort of trying to deal with that. You're trying to make sure the club is strong. You're dealing with a lot of emotion. Like certainly well reported the relationship that Justin and Ivan had at the time. And so you're dealing with a lot of emotion. You're dealing with personal emotion. And like, to be fair, I think Justin did a really good job at how he handled that because as a friend. And so that's another hard dynamic to deal with and to protect the club. But yeah, I think that was certainly a tumultuous time, and sort of then the transition into Madge, came about. Obviously, that was a really highly publicised off season with Wayne and Madge and lots of sort of names floating about. And so you then, but then you're also very quickly into the next season. Okay, memberships on sale, merchandise is out. 2019. You're sort of planning 2020 is the 20th year, so you have 20-year stuff. You're sort of just into the next year, right? And it just sort of comes, and that's sort of the job. Yeah.
Michael Maguire, was it a case of oil and water, or is there something more that went on there, you think?
In terms of how it ended with Madge?
Just in terms of, from my perspective, and we've spoken about it, Michael probably wasn't the rebuild coach that we required at that time. He would argue back then that he could have gotten an extra 2-3% out of them to get them into the finals. They got very close. They never got there back there again under him. Do you think that he was the right coach at the right time at that point? Or, realistically looking back, was it a marriage that was never going to succeed?
Yeah, it's a hard one, right? Because you got to remember you're coming off the back of Ivan going, not expected. So then all of a sudden you're trying to find a coach. Not a great position you want to be in first and foremost. Now to say that he's the best coach available, like Wayne was technically available. So you sort of probably have to look at the runs on the board and say probably Wayne. But the one thing I'd say is, right, like we talk about Madge getting close. Like we beat Cronulla, they're in the finals. Again, the little things of like you lose your fullback the day of the Cronulla game, and Robbie is playing on a broken leg. Like structurally, it's not a great thing. You're already playing with guys down, and then you lose your fullback the day of the game to make the finals. And say the Tigers run 8th and get bundled out of the finals, it doesn't matter. Madge is the first coach to make the finals in 10 years, and the bloke's a hero. I think it really went under the radar how much Madge got out of that roster in 2019. It's not his team whatsoever. We're talking about guys like Ben Madaleno and Russell Packer who, again, get whacked for how they finished their time at the Tigers. Look at how the Tigers started in 2019, and then Russ does his MCL against the Warriors in round 5, plays the last 5 minutes with a torn MCL, is out for 6 weeks, and the pack's never the same. Ben Madaleno picks up a knee injury against the Cowboys. Again, plays through a career-ending knee injury in Golden Point, doesn't play again. And so all of a sudden, then the 2 starting front rowers for New Zealand aren't in your team for the year. And that's hard. That's an impact on the pack. It's an impact on lots of things. You're dealing with, lots of sort of challenging circumstances around players that are coming and going at that point too. Madge is trying to sign players that he wants for 2020. But you're dealing with a side that Ivan had built and was sort of ready to compete. And so the biggest thing I loved about being with Madge is the bloke just wanted to win all the time. Rebuild doesn't exist. And I love that because I don't know, it's too short. Have a go, try and win. It's not about, I look at what Flano said about not going to win the comp this year. I can tell you right now, Madge could have the worst team in the comp, and he would never ever utter those words, and he would never let the players think that they wouldn't win because the bloke is a winner. He just is. You look at Reece Walsh when he's on the podium after the grand final, and that's what he says because there's no other way to put it. He just makes you believe that you're going to win. Um, and I think like it went underappreciated just how much he sucked out of that roster that wasn't his, that had a lot of blokes out of position, that had a lot of guys that were sort of, Paul Momirovskis and these guys that are like off-casts from other teams in a way, were playing awesome footy under Madge. Benji at the back end of his career, Robbie at the back end of his career, and was getting a lot out of them. So, yeah, I got a lot of time for Madge. I think roster was really hard, and then I think certainly just the back end of sort of the way it unfolded. And then you see what happens once Madge gets moved on. Like it's consecutive wooden spoons. With a team that I would say is more talented than what Madge was dealing with, particularly in the last 18 months, just in terms of sheer talent on paper. Yeah.
Fair way to look at it, mate. One member of that squad that you did touch on was Benji Marshall. I know that you've dealt with Benji Marshall, the player, and you've dealt with him as, as a person as well. Was there sort of clues and Easter eggs of sorts left by Benji in those years that made you think that there might have been a career in coaching there that laid on the horizon, or did it take you by surprise?
I think it took a bit of surprise how quickly it happened, as I think was everyone, right?
Yeah.
And I think with Benji, like I came in 2014, so Benji left literally the year before. So I came into the aura of Benji, having watched Benji as a kid, having like, Benji. And then he goes away, St. George, Brisbane, obviously, and then eventually comes back. And so like the excitement, I remember so we shot the Internal Tigers documentary this day forward. Shout out Junior Meredith. Honestly, one of the best bits of videography I've ever seen one person produce. I think people don't realize that. It's on YouTube. Go and find it. It's brilliant. The day Benji comes back to training is just unbelievable. It was like just a normal preseason training day, and there was just a buzz. So like, I think Benji's always had an aura to him, which I think then when you think about what that does as a coach, is really cool because obviously, and you hear it all the time from Terrell May and lots of players about how much they gravitate to Benji. He oozes confidence. When it's bad, it looks like cockiness and people spraying for being cocky as a player, but it's just confidence. He's got an incredible ability to just switch off, and he's just like really annoyingly good at everything. Like the dude is smart. He just like taught himself to play the guitar one day on the back of the bus and was just playing the guitar. I don't know what his golf game's like, but like he's a gun at golf. Like he's just one of those people that's annoyingly really good at everything. So no, doesn't surprise me that he's a good coach because he cares about people. And he is fiercely loyal and he gets life in balance. And so I think then when you combine that with obviously what is a genius footy mind, as long as you put the right structure around him, I think that's clear. There's going to be a really good coach there. And it's not even necessarily about Tigers DNA or that sort of stuff. I just think that is more and more of what modern coaching is just being there for people, and putting good balances in place. Because like most game plans are pretty good. And a lot of that's your assistants, right? So it's about then those little 1%ers, which are culture and signing right people and getting that in place. Look at Andrew Webster at the Warriors, another great example of that. I think Ben Gardner, if he is not the long-term coach of the Perth Bears, they have missed a massive trick. Like he is another one that gets that. So yeah, I think like that's sort of where coaching's going, and I think Benji's a really great example of that, and will continue to be moving forward.
Brilliant. All right. What's a yarn or two that you've got that might have actually missed the papers in a period where everything got leaked out that you can actually speak to?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, there's obviously plenty that didn't make the papers. That's my job. Look, I think probably more when things make the papers, but you don't realize the depth of like actually how it wasn't happening. Like, still to this day, people firmly believe Robbie was playing at Date Leichhardt. Mate, he was not. Like, he just wasn't playing. The guy wasn't going to bring his boots, and last minute packed his boots. Corey Thompson's no good in the warm up. or Paul Morris, is good, no good in the warm up. One of them, I can't remember. I think it's Corey, and then like comes into the sheds, and it's like Tommy Talau, who's like an 18-year-old kid as 18th man, and Robbie, um, and Madge is like, "Well, you're in, kid." To Robbie, and it's this moment of like Robbie's like, "Oh, okay, well, I actually currently still have a broken leg and haven't run, but sure, I'll go on the bench." And so like again, I can remember running back up to so that Leichhardt, the media box is upstairs, but it's also right next to where the opposition coach's box is. So I remember running back in, and I can't remember who the Cronulla coach is. Maybe it was Fitzy by then. I
That's
don't think so. Flano. But I remember seeing Phil Mace, who was their head of football, was the head of football at Tigers for a while. I remember opening the door, which is like you'd never do it. You just would never go in the opposition coach's box. But it was like 2 minutes to kick off, and I had to tell them there's been a late change. And like Mossy was just smiling at me, almost like we thought this was happening. And I just remember being like, I promise you, this is not deliberate. And like little things. So it's a full house at Leichhardt, and my phone is therefore not working. And so like you try and get in touch with Lara Pitt on the sideline to communicate like that Robbie's playing, and you know that this is going to blow up. You go back to Mac, your question earlier about numbers. I'm like, man, if I can just get this out on the internet, this will go insane. But I can't because there's no internet here because there's 15,000 people on their phones. So like, yeah, those sorts of moments. I think probably one actually, if I can share, that never made the papers because it was about me, and so I'm glad that it never made the papers. In 2021, we had obviously COVID and all that sort of stuff was pretty nuts. Wasn't going great at the Tigers. There's a very couple of articles on when I decided to turn the comments off on social. We'll just skip past the fact that the Bulldogs did it for a few weeks beforehand. That's okay. But I turned the comments off when we got flogged by Melbourne on the Sunshine Coast. It was like 50-0 at halftime. 66-16 or something, and I just had enough and I turned the comments off because I just didn't want everyone else to read the negative crap that was coming, and probably it was a sign that I was also really struggling with it all. And then I remember that Monday, I think we had a board meeting, and then the Tuesday, I remember I called Justin. I was like, I just can't come to work. I'm just mentally cooked. I think we had the bye, and then we were maybe playing Souths at Leichhardt. And I hadn't missed a game in, I don't know, whatever it was, 10 years or whatever. Let alone really taking a holiday in season. And I took mental health leave for 2 weeks, purely like, and full credit to like Charmaine Stevenson, who's the head of women's football there now. She was awesome in just like be off, have this time. And I remember I messaged Justin, I messaged Hardy, Adam Hardigan, who's at the Bulldogs now, and Madge saying like, hey, just FYI, this is happening. Like I need some time. And I don't want to be called. Not because I don't want to deal with it. I just don't want to deal with this. I just don't want to be talking about it over and over again. And in those 2 weeks, I reckon Madge called me 10 times of just like checking in. And like, again, you don't need to do that. And so like, there's lots of things that go on that don't make the paper, good and bad. But that's like, you think like for me, that is something I remember and I will tell everyone about if they want to know about it, because it's like, that's people, right? And so, yeah, that's something that I think is really special to me and meant a lot. Because, like we all go through ups and downs, right? It's life. And so I think like, yeah, that was one. But, certainly the chaos of Leichhardt that day was pretty bizarre. Sort of the ins and outs, Willy Woney, that was all a bit of fun. I'm trying to think what else there's like, I don't want to like bait you guys too much, but there's definitely some stories in mind that didn't make the papers. That once we turn the recording off, we can share those. But no, I think and for the most part, right, like things get out. There's not that many secrets. People always think there's these massive cover-ups, and there's really not a lot of the time.
Quick one on the Big Four drama, right? Like
Yep.
you were there doing that. Like that was like that was probably the Tiger story of the decade, right? Like how did that come about? How did we go from like having Mitch Moses, James Tedesco, Aaron Woods, Luke Brooks?
Yeah.
Obviously we didn't lose Luke Brooks, but like from your perspective, from the inside looking out, and I know this story's been played out. How did that go wrong? Like, was there a key moment in time where you were able to see that this was like happening, like it was actually all about to go pear-shaped, or like what was your perspective on it?
Yeah, I think I knew very early in that preseason that particularly Woods like Aaron and James had both been offered contracts and weren't signing. And so, like, you go back to sort of what you said at the start about silence. It's like, like, why are we waiting here? Like, there's so many wrinkles to it. Isaac, Joe Weeby, Jason Taylor, Ivan Cleary. It sort of went down to like, oh, Ivan put a deadline on them. And really all that was we knew they weren't staying at that point. I think sort of the way in which it unfolded was, I think was then really reflective of the animosity or lack thereof the Tigers fans felt, right? I think, there was obviously a bit of animosity at the time to Woodsy for the way in which sort of that interview on Fox went and then going to Canterbury. I think Teddy was like, yeah, no, I just really want to go and win a comp. And everyone's like, okay, fair enough. And he did the very next year, and the year after. And so that was sort of like, I think you look at those two and there's less animosity. I think Mitch, that ended really messy. Sort of the way that unfolded, wanting to get to Parramatta. Again, it became really clear that he was going to go to Para. Without it being said, I think it was really obvious that the Tigers just needed another halfback and were trying to get Tui Lolohea from the Warriors and just needed to wait a few weeks. And it just wasn't going to line up. And so there were some really messy weeks there where Mitch got out and went early to Para. There's that sort of clip after the Easter Monday game of like, which dressing sheds are you going to go into? Which didn't go down well, but it did lead to my all-time favorite quote of like snarky Ivan, because Ivan's a lovely guy, but Ivan's also like, don't piss him off in a really good way, right? And he's fiercely loyal. And Ivan said this quote on Triple M or something at the end of the year of like, looking back on the year, it was like, oh, well, two of our best players left and one of them down tools and quit, which is like of snarky Ivan, really good. So yeah, I think, it was just sort of really unfortunate the way it happened, but I think the club's learnt, and certainly most clubs have learnt, right? Like, try and not have your four biggest players all managed by the same person, all coming off contract at the same time in an unsuccessful team. If you can avoid that, you should be fine. Yeah.
Did you know that not so long ago, only a few months ago, Aaron Woods did an AMA on Reddit. And one of the questions he got asked was like, what's the biggest regret? And he said believing in the Tigers was the biggest regret he's ever had in his life. Which in retrospect makes sense.
I offered him a trade in a fantasy football comp the other week that he turned down, that he may regret as well if he wants to update that. But yeah.
But think about like if that hadn't have happened, like I think Tedesco, that's probably one where he wanted to go to the Roosters as much as like anything, like it was his childhood club. But Ivan Cleary, 2019, 2020, with those four players in the side, look at what he actually ended up doing when he was at Penrith. It would have been, it's one hell of a sliding doors moment, one hell of a what if like all of those players stayed with that coach.
For sure, right? I think Mitch and Brooksy, I still question. Like, I think, again, like Mitch was still playing 6 at that time. Like, credit to Mitch. Like, he has taken the halfback role in a way in which I think most people didn't see coming. Like, he played fullback at the Tigers and then played 6. And so, like, Brooksy was a 7. And so I sort of still don't know whether long-term the Brooks and Moses works at first grade. Again, you'll never know, right? Teddy's work ethic and his defensive work. But again, I think his game has gone to a level at the Roosters that he was really raw at the Tigers. His attack was brilliant. And I can always remember feeling like, man, if we just play the ball out the back to Teddy, we'll score a try. We just need to get down the other end of the field. But like what he does in the Roosters, there's so many little things now that I think Robbo's really evolved his game and how he's become so good. So yeah, look, I think, like everything, right? What could have been, but what could have been if, Tim Simona doesn't kick the ball 20 metres out in the full on the opening kickoff against Canberra in 2015 or 16.
Mac, before I turn him into a pundit, is there anything else that you want to ask?
No, I was going to ask some inappropriate questions about Alex Twal, but...
the Lebanese gazelle, yes.
You want... No.
The Lebanese gazelle, Twali.
Look, I mean, there's a rumour going around
that he and Ryan Madison were shaving each other's legs. What?
No, but that's good.
A rumour. That's just a joke.
We can probably leave it there.
Like, Twali, that's a joke.
Play on, though.
Look, there's a rumour going around that Twal has a gigantic hog.
I mean, I'm not.
Confirm or deny?
That's. You might have to ask Twiley that one. Yeah, you might have to ask him that one. I tended to try. This may shock you, but I tended not to try and go into the change rooms when they were changing, and if I did, I tended to try and look them in the eye. It's a real revelation. I know. Yeah.
That says a lot about you.
Yeah. Thank you, mate. Yeah.
No worries.
All right, mate. How do you reckon we'll go this year? Obviously, it feels like the roster has now been built to a point where there's genuine depth. There's strike on the edges, and the forward pack is serviceable. We think that they'll make the 8. We're also, a West Tigers affiliated podcast, and we are quite one-eyed. Where do you think this group's at, and what do you think is their ceiling? What do you think is their floor?
Yeah, and it's really good that you say those 2 words because they're the 2 that come to mind. Like, I think the ceiling is, for the first time in a long time, I think they're a genuine top 8 team as their ceiling. I'm a massive Dream Buller guy. I think people don't realise how quick he is. I'd put him over nearly every other fullback in the comp, maybe Hammer. I think Dream is lightning.
Speed, right? For speed.
Yeah, for speed, right?
Speed.
And so I think like I just don't think at full speed, I just don't think I see people catch him. And so I think actually having genuine speed is something the Tigers haven't had for a very, very long time. Yeah, like Marcy's exciting, without a doubt. Terrell May was really good the back end of last year. And I think, the middle is stronger than what it's been previously, right? Again, it comes down to Jerome. And like you're assuming everybody's healthy and all those sorts of things. I think the ceiling is they're a top 8 team without a doubt. And if I take my Tigers bias off, I'm not sure how many times in the last 10 years I could say that the ceiling of them has been a top 8 team. I think the floor is still low, right? Because I think there's still inexperience. There is still question marks. Like I think Jerome last year is a pass. Obviously he came with massive hype, right? 4 comps and all that sort of stuff. Like, I think he did a lot of good, but he wasn't the best halfback in the comp last year. So, like, I think the floor is still low just in terms of what it could be and where it could go wrong. But I loved ads at 7. I think that is working. I think it's unnatural, and I think that makes it really hard to game plan against and really hard to defend against. And sort of, I think that lets you bring teams down into a bit more of a dogfight. And I sort of like that. I don't think we're going to win games 30-28 as much as we might want to. I think the games we win will be 30-12, or they'll be 12-10, because we'll suck them into a dogfight, and then Adam Dewey will take on tired legs with 10 to go and score. So I actually think ads at 7's a really nice point of difference to a lot of teams, where a lot of team 7s are just kick the ball to the corner and do what you do. He's bigger. He's a different body. He's a great defender. And he's a competitor too, right? He's very much in the Benji Robbie mold of just, he just wants to win. So I think they're a top 8 team at their best, and I think they're about 13th at their worst. And so I think it's going to be about how much can you be consistent in that. And as always, right, like, can you just win 3 games you probably don't deserve to win? Win a couple of games where you get a bit lucky and you get the right call and all that sort of stuff. And every Tigers fan is going to say that never happens. But like, it's just getting a little bit of luck here or there. I actually think the bigger thing is I think the comp's just much better. I think like teams are just better than what they were 3 years ago. So I look at the teams that weren't in the 8 last year, teams like South. I think the Titans could be really good this year. So like, I think there's a lot of teams that weren't in the 8 that will potentially be better. And so that then becomes a challenge, right? This is a really long-winded way of saying, yeah, of course it's our year and we're going to win the comp. Yeah.
Well said.
Yes, agreed.
Mac, you got anything else before we farewell Dan for the evening?
No, thanks very much for coming on. It was awesome to have you on. Come back anytime. Sorry for asking you so many inappropriate questions, but
That's
the
all right.
fans got to hear this shit. That's what they live for, Dan.
Nah, I get it. And like, genuinely, like, man, I'm a fan too, right? Like, as in, like, I have loved being away and being able to be a fan now. Like, it's different when you're in it. But also too, like, like, I know we joke, but man, there's some really hard people who are working really hard there. The work that Mia and her team are doing in the content space. I think they've hired like genuinely the best up and coming designer in sports media in Jane Mortimer, who's an absolute gun. And like their social guy just got hired by the NRL, Nate, because he's been doing a great job. So like I actually think like there's a lot of good that's going on there, and they're doing a hell lot of good stuff that I wasn't doing at all. So yeah, there's some stuff I did well, but like they're a really talented team in the media and content space, and yeah, don't sleep on them because if they win some games, man, you can always be more creative when you win. To say that.
I've been saying for the last 12 months or so that I think that they have the best social media team in the NRL. So good to hear that you rate them because that's my bag. That's what I do. So
Yeah, man, Jane Mortimer, she is a gun. Sorry,
is there
everyone.
anybody
Jane's
else?
contract's still up now. Yeah.
Yeah, you trying to poach her or something? Is there anybody else there that you want to shout out? Anything else
A
you
lot
want
of
to
my
say?
people have moved on. A lot of my people have moved on. Nah, there's a lot of good people there, right? They work really hard. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is that clubs come and go. Like club will be there after you go. You just want to leave it in a better place than how you found it. And so like, I took over from some really good people. Wayne Cousins, who's then gone to Manly, was in hospital for a long time, just come out, which is really good. Like, Craig Hayden now at Ironman Australia. Like, I take over from people that did an awesome job. Probably the one is, man, Junior Meredith's still floating around a few days as a videographer. I don't think people realised how much work Junior did in terms of access and sort of. I think we were really proud in being one of the first clubs to really stretch open access. Shot an internal documentary like no one had ever done that. We did a whole lot of extra stuff, which was really cool. And so I think, and again, that was when we weren't winning. So, yeah, he's a really talented guy and certainly deserves a lot of love too. So, yeah, no, there's a lot of good people there, obviously. And I think you just want to continue to see the club grow and be successful. And again, like we all get caught up in the Holman Barnes, whatever, and CEO this and head coach this. And like, man, I don't know. It's all going to be there after they go. Like it'll be someone new, and the club's protected by a heritage deed. It's not going anywhere. It's got a massive fan base. It's got good fans, and like everyone says it, but like, man, this club wins and it's going to go through the roof. So yeah, see you all in
I
Vegas
do
next
have
year.
I do have one last question that's
Yep.
probably a really good one to finish on. I think a lot of young people, a lot of people in general, like, dream of working for an NRL club,
Yeah.
right? One thing that we didn't ask is how you actually managed to come about getting the role in the first place. I won't
Yeah.
ask you that. What I will ask you though is like right now, what do you think the best way would be for somebody to actually get on an NRL club's radar and actually
Yeah.
like get a role like yours at an NRL club?
Work your ass off for free. And like that's not advice people want to hear, but like that's the truth.
Yeah.
Find a way to volunteer, like do stuff like this. Go and help at State Cup. Go and take photos and show there's value and intern and yeah, like it's a hard slog because they're dream jobs. And everyone's working really hard. And it's not to say like treat yourself like a doormat and get used for 12 months for free content and then get moved on. But I think, yeah, they're competitive jobs. So like try and show how there's value. Because whoever's hiring you is going to have to try and show to a CEO that there's value as well. So, unless you're replacing someone who's leaving, um, you're trying to show how there's a job that you should be having. So if you think there's a space to do more physiotherapy work in the women's program, show how that can happen. But you're going to have a plan for how you're going to add 75 grand worth of value so that they can hire you. Like that's just business, right? So I think, yeah, it's having a plan, being realistic about it. And then the biggest thing is just to try and get as much experience as you can before you try and walk in the door. So, I worked for Bleacher Report for a few years before I went to the Tigers. Before I started working at Bleacher Report, I basically worked for free for Bleacher Report on top of my uni degree for 2 years. And so like I'm really proud of that because like, yeah, I worked like all night and then just rocked up to uni the next day and like, yeah, it's watching basketball and American football and soccer. It's not that difficult, but um it's still work. And so like that's how I got that job, right? And I'm fully convinced that if I didn't have that experience, if I hadn't been volunteering to do stuff for the Wallabies or for Cricket Australia or Tennis Australia, I wouldn't have had the chance to interview at the Tigers and then show my value. And so I think that goes for everyone in every job, right? Like as much as you can keep taking on extra stuff, it does go a long way. Yeah.
Yeah, but well, mate, I know how busy you've been at the moment, and I very much appreciate you taking time out of what has been a very busy week for you, not for me.
That's all right. All credit goes to my wife who is looking after my child at the moment. So I'm going to go and help out there
All
because I
right,
may have said this was a 20-minute phone call.
mate.
Sorry.
Right.
No. It's on me. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, mate.
That's
See you
good.
tomorrow.
See ya.
Off he goes. What'd you think, mate?
He's a lovely man.
He is a good man.
He's like, he's so nice and like genuinely nice that like I felt awkward about asking him like the bannery stuff, to be honest. I was like, oh man, do I really want to ask this bloke about Twel's hog? And immediately regretted it as it came out of my mouth. But you know what? No, he's a lovely guy. Yeah, you can tell he cares about people, so he must be a nice bloke to work for.
He is. He is. And I know I'll be listening back to this, but yes, genuinely on camera and off camera, he's a good bloke to work for. Now, let's talk about just some general West Tigers stuff before we talk about Club Day. We're going to Vegas next year. I know how much you love what did you call it the other day? A worthless work junket. I'm sure you'll be positioning.
I never said that.
there.
I don't call my work junkets worthless.
What are your thoughts on the Tigers going to Vegas? How much of this is to do with Richo leaving, and how much of this is HBG going, fuck yeah, free holiday?
Yeah, that's a really funny question to ask. As soon as you ask that question, you know who popped into my mind?
Dennis.
Yeah. I was like, Richo's out of the way. Dennis is like, we're going to Vegas, baby. I'm gonna get me a what do they call it when you're like a permanent residence at one of the casinos? Burgess has got dreams of being permanent residents at one of the casinos. Look, I'm for it. I to be honest, like, I'm just glad that we're going to see the Tigers in the first week of the season next year. Like, that's the main thing. I don't know. I might go. I don't know. Like, I have an uncanny ability of finding ways to like justify going to Tigers games in like far off destinations by tying it in with some sort of job thing. So I might just find some sort of reason to be in Vegas around the time and just happen to go. Money 2020's in Las Vegas. Hopefully it's in early next year, something like that. That'd be cool. But no, I'm happy for it. I think it's a good idea. I feel like that the NRL. I feel like Richo now because the Tigers for the club. I never really quite understood why Richo was so against it. To be honest, like I think maybe it comes down to the fact that like he didn't want to give away the home gate or something, or like, but the idea that it's a distraction or something like that, like, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't care. I don't agree. I'm glad they're gone.
I think it was just more that it was going to disrupt our season, and realistically, we weren't in a position where, of the big clubs, you look at, they're called the Pioneers now, but the clubs that first went over, the Chooks, South, Manly, who are owned by Scott Penn, who lives in America, and the Roosters.
You said the Roosters twice.
Oh, did I? Roosters, Broncos, South, Manly.
Broncos.
That was four. They, again, Manly aren't a big club, but Scott Penn lives in the US. Yeah, it was probably just going to cause instability. I think the club's in a better place now. I don't know about off the field, but certainly on it. Maybe they're more willing to do it now. And, if there was a round 2 bye, I think the fans would be pretty annoyed. But I think, you could sort of swing it with the club in that way that it wouldn't interrupt preparation, although it wouldn't, sort of come to a week-to-week grind. I think that there's word that we'll play Parramatta.
Yeah.
That'd be unreal. I think you get 30,000 in the stadium at that point for those two teams. Very, very well supported. And there'd be so many that'd be so keen to get over there. Look, the games against Parramatta, the Easter Monday games, are some of the best regular season football you'll see. Full stop. Forget, us saying that as Tigers fans. I'd be pretty happy to see that.
I think the only downside to it is that like Parramatta versus the Tigers is the best home game for both clubs every year. So that's the only downside to it. Yeah, I think that it's probably talk about distraction. It's going to be really distracting. Coming straight from the UK, from the World Club Challenge, straight over to Vegas. But I guess they're just going to have to put up with that, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so, mate. I think so. Anyway, look, one for our fans more than anything to see you play. See the boys play in Nevada, which would be incredible. But Terrell May, really quickly said that he wanted to be kept out of the spotlight because his star shone too brightly last year. I can understand that. He's come out and said some things in the Daily Telegraph. I'm just going to read the quotes. There were chats I was having with Richo about me becoming a Tiger for life. He even came out publicly and said he wanted me to be a Tiger for life, and that's what we were working towards. But ever since he left, it's gone a bit dull. I do see myself here forever. I love our fans in the club, but I think they totally forgot about it. Now, I don't know how I feel about this one. Like, Terrell is, hard on his sleeve, tells you exactly how he's feeling, but realistically, I think there was probably some bigger priorities. There's a lot of fires that Sean Millercamp's had to put out. And I don't think there's too much to worry about realistically. I think his future's probably tied to Benji Marshall. But what was your take on the situation?
Well, I'm generating it in real time because I didn't know about this. Immediate reaction, weird thing to say, but it is Terrell May, and I'm also somebody who says weird things, so I can kind of relate. I think, to be honest, I feel like a guy that's so transparently himself all the time. It does make it easy to manage, to be honest, because you kind of just know where you stand with him at all times. So him saying something like that, it's like, oh, Camp could easily just be like, oh, Terrell, man, I didn't know you felt that way. Like, come over here. Here's a contract. Let's just sort this thing out, and it's done, right? It's like, next time, just come straight to me, man. Like, I want to have a rapport with you. Like to what you said. Camp's probably been dealing with heaps of contract shit since Richo left and all sorts of other stuff. So Terrell's probably right. They probably did forget about him in the sense that, Camp probably just. But I do think on the flip side, individual player management at the Tigers is something that I do worry about a little bit. I think Benji's probably good at it, like from what I can see. Like, to be honest, like he seems to be like a pretty good coach in that respect. But it's so important. It's so very important that each individual person in any team, in any environment, whether it's a family, office, a trade, or a construction site, or a footy team, feels like that they're actually like valued. Otherwise, they'll leave, man. That's just the reality. People will just eventually just leave because people want to feel valued. They want to feel validation. So if Terrell's feeling that way, mate, I can't. That's his feeling. That's his emotions. And I get it. And I could imagine how that could be the case. And it's up to the Tigers to resolve that.
Absolutely, it is, and I think it will get resolved. I mean, we've spoken a little bit about November 1 in the rearview mirror, and there are a lot of high profile players off contract. But it wouldn't surprise me. Actually, I don't know now with the Tyrone situation whether or not they'll look to tie up Talon and Terrell immediately. It's a bit of a weird one, but obviously he's keen to stay, wants to stay around. It's just obviously market value and how many years, and tying it all to his brothers, right?
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, you can't wait till Talon's back off contract to extend Terrell. It doesn't work like that, right? Like, I mean,
No.
unless you decide you're going to extend. I don't even know if they can extend Talon this far out. I don't think you legally can. I think you have to. I think there's some sort of limitation. Like, I don't think you can start extending a player until it's like the season before the season that they're off contract or something like that.
No. He's only signed a 2-year deal. He's off at the end of 27, the same as Terrell. They've done that on purpose to line themselves up as a package deal. You can talk to him right now. He's a free agent in November.
Right. Yeah, okay, yeah. So I think the way it works is if he was off contract in 2028, we wouldn't be able to extend him till next year. I know it's one of those hidden weird contract rules. But yes, if he's off contract at the end of 2027, yeah. In that case, man, do you really? Okay, let me ask you a better question. Do you really just waste your roster spot on Tyrone just to land Taylor and Terrell?
That's a really good question. I think that he
That's a hard question to answer. The fact that it's even questionable is actually wild, isn't it?
it comes
Like-
down, yeah, that's right. Look, gun ahead, yeah, I would do it, but I have my reservations the same way that I still did and do about Talon, as a human being. But I think it comes down to dollar value. Tyrone's just won a World Club Challenge, right?
Yeah, okay.
He's aware that obviously, form in the Super League doesn't translate to the NRL or in the World Club Challenge, but what dollar amount does he try and negotiate for? If it's 400, I'm not signing him. If it's 300, I'm looking into it. Look, Jock Madden comes off at the same time, so if you wanted a backup 7 and a guy that could moonlight at 13, then he provides value to the roster in that sense. Yeah, it's a really interesting one. And further, if you have the boys as a package deal, all three of them, can you bring their salaries down and almost play it as the brother bonus or the brother discount, right? It's a really interesting one for the Tigers to navigate. But Tyrone has come out on the record and said that the Tigers offered him a deal last year when he actually rejected it. So will the Tigers go back to the well? Quite possibly.
They did they? Wow, interesting thing for Tyrant to say. If Richo was here, he would never get another offer because Richo's moral code would have meant that he couldn't because he doesn't like it when people talk about contract deals in the media. I think I would do it personally. I think I would do it for 400 as well, to be honest. Because I just think that, like, man, the disruption that we would have from losing Taylor and Terrell at the end of 2027, when we're just starting to like get stable with our roster and like they're so very important. Like they're arguably our best back and best forward. So you can make an argument that they're our two best players, really, right?
Yeah.
So you really genuinely could. So like, can we really afford to? Like if the cost of keeping our two best players is signing their brother to 400K, who's probably, if I'm being honest, if Tyrone was here right now, he'd be in the top 17 probably, top 19.
Yeah.
So I'd do it. I don't. If you go back and listen to what I was talking like in mid last year about Taylor and Terrell and Mays and stuff like that, I probably sound like a hypocrite. But I'm kind of like at the point where I've made my peace with it. Taylor's put some distance between himself and his past, and you've got to just give him the benefit of the doubt for as long as he continues to earn that benefit of the doubt. I've grown fond of Terrell May. He's a one of one when it comes to the way that he like is in the NRL landscape. He's just so unique, and also I hate Laurie Daly. I hate him. So enemy of my enemy is my brother, Laurie Daly. The way he talks about Terrell May, like disrespectful. That's a disrespectful man. You don't talk about the men that way. Not cool, Laurie.
Yeah, Laurie hates the Tigers. We all know that. Anyway, but yeah, I do agree with you. It's probably a deal that you should get done, and I think it's a deal they probably will get done. But anyway, all that free agency chat we'll see how it sort of plays out in these next few weeks and months, particularly around some players that are off contract, including one Jareem Buller. And for all of you that keep on asking me, the situation hasn't changed as far as I'm aware. All right. On Saturday, the West Tigers had their club day, which involved Andrew Johns Cup, Laurie Daly Cup, SG Ball, and Harold Matthews. The latter two saw Balmain and West play one another, which is always good, because it means that I can go out there and I can have a look at every single player just about that we have in these pathway squads. I'm going to start at the bottom, which was a 10 a.m. game played by the Andrew Johns Cup. The boys shuffled their pack, or the coach did rather. They won 22-0 over the Western Rams. It wasn't actually their full-strength side. And young Adam El Masri, who was the number 14 off the bench and scored a double, well, it was his first time playing. So it speaks to obviously the depth and quality in the squad. And what they possess. I'm going to mainly talk about, for the most part, and Mac, I'm not sure if you saw Andrew Johns and Laurie Daly, but you jump in anytime you need. But there was a couple of players that caught my eye, so I think I'm just going to talk about it. The first one is the 5'8" Mulatoni Talanoa. He's moved around the 17 all year, but I think he had a few nice touches, lacking a little bit of in execution in terms of passes going to ground and whatnot. But I thought he looked dangerous most of the time he touched the footy. He looked like a really decent six. Kieran Mostyn, the winger, number 2, very tall, quick, rangy Indigenous fella. He looked like a bit of a handful. I'm curious to see how he fills out. And that was a bit of a recurring theme amongst these blokes. A lot of 16-year-olds that, sort of haven't grown into their bodies very clearly, that still have a lot of strength and conditioning work to do and some technique. But there's a lot of skill on show there, and a lot of guys that I think, we might be looking at into the future. The 2 that I'm about to mention are ones that I think have have genuine claims to push through the Tigers' pathways. The first one is Denim Sagalis, who I've mentioned before. He's pretty athletic for a kid his size. He's a front rower. He scores tries for a front rower. I really, really like the look of him, and he plays long minutes. He seems to be he seems to be a leader of this pack, and I really like it. Zeldrick Vayau, he's not one of the 2 that I'm going to talk about. He scored a try and won Bar TV's player of the match. He was really good. I've just got some concerns around size, but I could be completely wrong, and he might hit a growth spurt. But there's something to like there. But the last one that I want to touch on is their left edge back rower, Hamish Butler. Really looks to be a weapon. He's tall. He's about 190 centimeters already. He's very rangy, like very, very skinny, lacking sort of conditioning and stuff. Needs to get on the protein shakes and the Zinger stacker boxes. But my word, once he fills out, he's going to be a problem. I think he prefers to play in the middle, but he can play edge. He can play middle. Clearly likes to perk people, but, a lot of technique in there that I really like. Found his front really often, knees and elbows. Really good play the ball speed. And I think just working on his timing and learning to hit those gaps, I think he's going to be a real handful in years to come. He's 16, so going to watch what he does very, very closely going into Harold Matthews and where he lands. But as I said, 22-0 and keeping them out, they were just the Tigers' defense on their line was excellent. They work hard for one another. And by about, I'm going to say about the 45th minute, the Western Rams didn't look like they wanted to be there anymore. It was a really supreme performance by a team that is absolutely assured finals contention now. That they'll play, I think it's the Dragons affiliated side, the South Coast side this week. You got anything there, Mac?
Nope, I didn't watch those games. Your appraisal sounds like the sort of appraisal one would make when they were at the ground, really like sitting there and analyzing some good young talent. So that must have been riveting for you to experience that, because I can tell you that my experience when I watched, old mate Galvin run around on KO Stadium during the champs, mate, it's special. So did you see a Galvin? Like, was one of those? Are you confident with any of those boys? Are you gonna put your balls on the line like I did and tell us that we got a first grader on our hands from that crew? Is there one there?
That was Andrew Johns.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put my balls on the line, but I do like the look of Hamish, and I'm keen to see how he progresses.
Right.
But there's a couple, particularly in Harold Matson, I'm pretty keen on, and we'll talk.
All right.
A little
Let's hear about him.
Can I do Laurie Daly first?
Of course you can.
All right, they won 66-6, which was genuinely men against boys from the start. They just were all over them. Vincent DeGiorgio, who was I think he was the left centre for the MacArthur West Tigers, had a double inside 12 minutes. He completed his hat trick on the 61st minute. But again, like I said, men against boys. Now, Western Rams are affiliated with Penrith. A lot of those boys from the country are already in those Penrith metropolitan sides, but you can say the same for us with Western Balmain. So, again, a really, really good show of the depth of talent that we have on display. The one that really caught my eye was the fullback, young Caleb Salanoa. I thought he had some great touches. There was a gorgeous pass that he threw as a cutout for the first 4-pointer, a really nice right to left. Thought he was really well involved in his work rate, didn't waver throughout the game, even when we were up by such a massive scoreline. Brock Achurch, there was an unreal effort. Tom Dearden-esque to save a certain 4-pointer down the left-hand side with about 20 to go. Again, we were well in control, but it speaks to sort of the mentality of some of these young blokes, which, is really, really important to have at that age. And obviously that self-belief, but also that drive to go and save that try, regardless of what the score was, is, unreal. Drake Ayres, I think he'd be the leading point scorer in this competition. He scored a lot of tries. He plays on the left wing, and seeing bits and pieces, there've been a few walkovers here and there that he'd scored, but there was a try that he scored where he had to carry a few players over the line. A lot of really nice, change of sort of movement and acceleration. I really like the look of him. And I think that, again, seeing that clear finishing ability on display and that power that he possesses, plus the ability to goal kick, I think it'll take him places. I thought he was really good. The other one alongside Salanoa that I really liked, and I love a lock forward, but Kai Penfold was excellent. He scored a fucking unreal try. If the highlights are on New South Wales or Bloke in a Bar, go and have a look. But just work right through the middle. Made his tackles and was third man in a lot of times, but hurt a lot of blokes on either side of the ball. And just the intent to score the try that he did, he was unreal. It was awesome. Did you see any of that one or? Okay.
Nah, the only one I watched for your reference was the SG ball game.
Which we'll get to straight after this. So Harold Matthews was a 32-4 win for the Maggies, their first of the season, and it came at a good time. They've got a reasonable run, the Maggies, to finish the year. They've got the Steelers, who are 2-1. I think they've got Manly, who are also 2-1. They've got the Dogs, who are a good side, but we always shape up against them okay, and they've got the Warriors to finish. So it was a time that they really needed it, and the player that stood out for mine, and I think he stood out for most people that watch these games, was Isaac Isdale. Oh my God. They couldn't tackle him. And it wasn't necessarily poor defense or anything like that. He just swung around on short sides when he needed to. Some wonderful evasive work. He backed up, off his centers and off his halves. I just thought he was excellent. His involvements in good ball and even in midfield and even in our red zone were just unreal. The combination that he had with Kingston Finau, who was I rated as the second best player of the day behind Isaac, was just unreal. But again, Isaac, there's been, people tell stories about the fact that kid was running block shapes when he was 9 years old, and you can see it. Just the way that he times his runs and, where he sort of swings to on his outside shoulder, his little footwork, or his change of pace. It's so good to watch. He knows when to throw that pass. It's all about timing for him. Now, my concern with Isaac is simply his size. I think that he'll probably end up around the size of a Jai Gray or a Heath Mason, which is doable. There's just so much to like there. Providing that he keeps that speed and power, those Isdale boys are built so low to the ground. There's just so much to like. Kingston Finau, who I mentioned, he's another one. If he grows another foot, I think that he'll go a long way. Runs a really good line on the inside shoulder of the 2-man. He's powerful and built low to the ground. And like his brother, who I think is a supreme prospect and has been our best player in Harold Matthews all year, I think he's got really, really strong claims for going a long way. Who else did I like? Jerome Cosgrave, I thought, had a good game. Terrell Golding Lyons, he got some pretty ugly balls out of hooker and dropped a couple whose fault you blame that or whatever. There was a really gorgeous kick that he put on a dime for Sam Francis, which spoke to his talent. I think he's excellent in that regard. I liked the strength in contact from Ioane Sasulu, who was the starting hooker for West. I thought he was really good. That was pretty much it on West. Balmain, they'll be pretty disappointed with their efforts in the red zone. I think there were a few times where where structure sort of fell away, and there was some opportunities for them to get it right, and they failed in those moments, and then West would go and score down the field. So these were, in some instances, 12-point turnarounds. When they did give themselves some time and some width and some depth, they scored tries. The try that, it was one try, but the try that James Kerr scored was a really, really nicely worked effort, and it was disappointing that it took so long. Noah Valtungi, who moved from MacArthur West Tigers to Balmain this year, when he got in and started doing some ball playing, thought he looked really good. And I liked Darby Fothering as well, who is the starting lock there. But the number 11, Ratu Ma'afu. I haven't seen much tape of him, But every time he got the ball, he looked really dangerous. He's got a really nice ability to offload. There was a couple of times that he pushed the pass, but that's okay. Getting that ball free and getting it away at this age is really important. Thought he ran a really good line. He looks a handful, even when he's rucking the ball out. I was really impressed by him, and I'm really curious to see how he went. Our podcasting colleague or rival, whatever you want to say, Rob Bashara, his son Zach, he's a little goer. He tries really hard. And it was actually him that threw the final pass with James Kerr. I was impressed by him. He just has a crack. I think I would say, and with what I know of Rob, I'm not particularly surprised that that's the way he plays his footy. SG Ball, mate, I feel like I've been talking for about 10 minutes straight. So why don't you give me your thoughts on that? Because I know that you watched this one from the front.
Man, it was like watching. I was watching the game and then like immediately like dissociating it from memory as I was watching it. It was terrible. It was such a bad game to watch. Like it was so like the standard, at least the first half was like just so sloppy, so many errors, so clunky. And I was particularly disappointed with Balmain. Like obviously the Magpies won, and ended up winning quite comfortably, which was quite a surprise. The only player that was missing for the Tigers was Blake Van Dree. I didn't realize that he was that important to the side, for a guy who, really has only been with the club for such a short period of time. But yeah, like I thought that, aside from Christian Azzi, they were really quite unimpressive. I think even the Magpies, it's hard for me to like reflect on it and like talk about it with too much, positivity, because the players that I think are earmarked for first grade, none of them really stood out all that much, to be honest. Like Christian Tapau-Moores doesn't dominate at this level the way that I expect he should. I think Zane Farmer-Kyle and him were pretty close to like equal in terms of their impact on the game. Not to say Zane had a great score try.
Yep.
Siatami was probably the pick of the pick of the like elite pedigree guys, right? But even he, I don't know what that bloke's doing playing him at 9. I mean, it's kind of like a tacit admission that they're really worried about his size, isn't it? Like that they keep trying to like toy with him playing the 9 role.
Yeah, I don't know. I sort of thought that it might have been that Nathan Lakeland was just trying to get his best pack on the field. And Peter Tighe, for mine, is not an edge. He's a 13. Maybe it was more because, Siatame has his gorgeous passing game that he can translate those skills a little bit easier. I don't know. You can read into it that way. I just more saw it as an opportunity for him to just get some reps and as many minutes as possible. But I could be wrong.
I don't. Yeah, I think it's Peter Tighe was probably, I don't know, from where I was looking, I'd probably call him man of the match, to be honest. Like, and it was a hard one to pick. Like, I mean, after the game, I was thinking to myself, I was like, Phoenix got the Bar TV Sports Player of the game, but that gets voted on by people at home. There's like 3 people watching it, so it's Phoenix's dad, mum, and grandma. So, like, take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I don't know. Hard game to really get bearings on. I mean, James Lanyon. Actually, let's talk about James Lanyon.
You can talk. You talk.
James Lanyon. He's going to play first grade. Like, so James Lanyon is definitely going to play first grade. Like, let's just put that aside right now. He is an athlete, like a sports person of that skill level that, like, if he played any sport would be elite at it. You can tell, like, he's just ridiculous. Like, he does those things, but he's also unrefined, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you agree? Like,
Yeah.
because he's doing things in a way that aren't footy good. He's just taking the piss, like catching a regulation kick, like in no space and just running around everybody, and like, going up the sideline and then setting up a try. Like, that's sort of stuff that you wouldn't really see in first grade unless it was from somebody like Josh Adokar, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, he doesn't look like he's like he's definitely fast, like fast, but he doesn't look like he's like top 1% NRL fast. Like he's not Jack.
No.
But what he does have that maybe some of the quicker guys usually don't have is just his like ability to move. Like he's got that ability to like, take that extra movement just as the defense gets near him. Like even like, a little bit like Jareem does, like that like Oztag style swerve.
Yeah.
When you get them out of you get out of their reach at the last minute type thing. He's going to be a really good first grader. I hope they just stick with him as a winger. It's very rare that you see players that just like come through the grades as a winger and end up being wingers in first grade. Usually, first grade wingers, centers that don't kick on, or fullbacks that don't kick on. Yeah, but no, very good player. I take it back. He was man of the match. Just because of the moments. Like, I mean, he was pretty quiet for a lot of the game, but like in the moment, like he had the highlight reel. Give him man of the match.
Yeah, he definitely did have that highlight moment. I think the whole game was a game of moments. Christian Azzi with 2 gorgeous try assists early in the first half, right? I'm sitting there looking at it going, okay, all right, this is the next guy in the pathways that I think is, is the half that we can look to that can progress through the grades. Similar to how we saw Mark Tanos come through. It's just questions around Christian in regards to his size. I think he's a more natural ball player than Mark. Well, I'm just curious to see how he goes. And better yet, he's got another year of SG ball, which is great news for us. Curtis Lakeman on the other side, he kicked a 40-20. I thought that was a really, really good involvement. I thought he had some good moments with ball in hand, some bad, but that happened. As you say, though, it was a pretty clunky game to look at. West discipline was an issue. Balmain started hot like they did against Parramatta the week before and then sort of fell away. Some other guys that I thought were great. Gun ahead, I actually thought Aaron Payer was man of the match. Again, because there was just so many different moments. I thought he was the most consistent.
Yeah, he was.
So the try that Glassy scored, he threw a beautiful pass, and then that was sort of a cutout. Then there was a catch pass for him to Glassy for James Lanyon to score. Thought that was really good. I thought on his kick returns he looked pretty decent as well. And it makes me wonder, like obviously he's just one player and the impact of that, but would we have won more games? Had he been right to go from round one? I'm not too sure. Brooklyn Milford, I thought when he got on the field was pretty skillful. For that reason, I don't really like that. Sort of gives me more of an idea around the Siatame stuff, starting him at 9. That maybe they're looking for impact with Brooklyn, but I'm not too sure. The Balmain bench hooker, Vaha Akalor Fafita, who you like, I thought he was really good. I thought he was really lively. And Alex Isdale, really nice work running the footy. And the other half, I thought that played pretty well for the first time in a little while was Javon Lele. He's a confidence player.
Yeah, he did play.
Well, you can tell, like, he's really well coached. Like, sort of looks inside, plays nice and square, a couple of little cues to try and throw the defenders off, plays nice and square. Like, I understand why the club has put so much time into Javon because you can tell. Like, I feel like he would rip it up at training, you can tell, because he has that in him. It's just that mental barrier. If he can get over that, man, he will star for this side in Jersey Flegg. It's just getting used to that, I think, and just getting over that mental barrier. Because again, I think he has all the tools and he has the physical capabilities. It's just for Javon, it's just between the ears. That's genuinely what it is. Another person where it's between the ears is Phoenix Godinez. I don't know whether or not this is. I played New South Wales Cup last year, and I'm just going to make my tackles and I'm going to take my hit ups. And if I get the ball on the back of shape, I'll make the right decision. Or whether it's just a problem. Full stop, because I know he's pretty driven. I don't know what it is at the moment with him. And I don't know until the end of the year, but he's just come off a great preseason. So it makes me think that he's kind of just like, I'm just going to do my thing. And last year, there was a lot of concerns around the fact that we had a guy like Hiamasi Makasini last year, and they did a lot of preemptive and premeditative stuff with him. I feel like they might be doing the same with Phoenix, which makes it easier for teams to gang up. But like Hiamasi last year, maybe we won't see it until he plays Flegg and he plays Cup, and then we can make a decision off that. So I'm not bashing Phoenix. I'm just kind of like, I just need to see a little bit more.
Yeah, knowing what we know about him, which is obviously very little, but like more than you would think, considering he, posts a lot on social media and people talk about him a lot in his personality and stuff like that. Find it hard to believe that Phoenix Godinez would go out on the field and like not put in 100%. Which makes me think makes me think it's literally instructed. I know it sounds crazy, but like I could totally imagine being that, they've got him already earmarked for like a New South Wales Cup round 1 game or something like that, which they probably do. Because he was like named in the starting side for the trial. Like, so I can totally imagine them being like, just go out there, blow up the cobwebs, get through your work, don't get injured. I could totally imagine them doing that. And I think that's probably also what they did with Marcy last year, which is why Marcy didn't go look at the extra. So I'm with you in the sense that like wait till we see what he plays like. I don't think he'll play flag. I think he'll be in the New South Wales Cup side round 1. I think Christian Tupper-Morse will be too.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's not the case, like if come next week when they name the 17th for flag and New South Wales Cup and those boys are still on SG ball, I'll retract that statement. But that's currently how I'm reading it. Not so much with Christian, but because Christian still seems like he's actually having a go. It just doesn't seem like he's making the impact.
Yeah.
To me. I do agree with you on Payer. I think Payer, I think Payer definitely had the best effort in the game. You said he was most consistent. I agree with that. I think Clayton Magoon. Magoon's going to be my watch all year. Like this is the Magoon podcast now.
Well,
yes, he's not centers. I know it's crazy, isn't it?
Magoon.
Clayton Magoon. The rise of Magoon is upon us. He has now come off the bench and he's now in the starting side. Rise, Magoon, rise. But he's named in the centers. This man is gigantic.
Well,
he's gigantic.
Well, in fairness, so is Boston Lauval, the number 20 for West.
He's gigantic.
Who scored a runaway try at one point. He is a big man. As is Clayton, who I think was doing a lot of work through the middle. So curious to see what Big Roy's got in store for him. The other bloke the other two that are worth mentioning, Josiah Palmer-Vibau, he's good. Love the look of him. There's something about him. And Ali Carnab, I think, had some good moments as well. I'm not seeing as much of him as I used to with him playing for Balmain, but
he looks 30.
There's still a player there.
He looks 30, bro.
He does.
You seen his face?
Yeah.
He looks like a 30-year-old tobacco shop owner. Like he looks like a man.
Yeah, he does.
Anyways, yeah, enough of that. I'm gonna go make dinner. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Not really. I think that'll pretty much do it.
Quick one. I TikToked up a couple. I don't know if you saw. I TikToked up a couple of the clips from last week.
I saw that.
Yeah, and I made some comments about Wayne Bennett and the South Sydney Rabbitohs. It seems to have rattled some South fans, ruffled some feathers. Now, I just want to make some clarifications. I stand by every word that I said. I'm not going to retract a single thing that I said, but let me clarify when I say I'm not death riding South. I would love to be wrong. I don't hate South. I don't love South. I don't hate South. I'm relatively ambivalent towards the South Sydney Rabbitohs. If you had have listened to the podcast in full, you would have heard that I said equally ridiculous things about most of the sides, and also, it was just taking a piss a little bit. So just simmer down. If South Sydney prove me wrong, Jared knows me. Everyone knows me. I'll be the first to admit it. But usually I'm not wrong. So it's just a thing. So what we're going to have to wait and see. What I will say is I did forget to mention David Fifita. I didn't even notice, but you brought him up. I didn't mention him. Like David Fifita, Adam Elliott, Brandon Smith to throw in there with Latrell.
You calling Brandon Smith Captain Cocaine was box office.
Captain Cocaine. There's more than one Captain Cocaine.
Well,
because Adam Elliott.
Hog is Adam Elliott. If anyone's seen that.
And then they just signed Jackson to Pine. Like, I mean, it's been. But I have to admit, after I said that, and I was getting a lot of like weird messages saying, "Are you fucking fucked in the head?" Like, well, am I wrong? Like, I went and looked at the 1 through 17 again, and then I looked at the other sides 1 through 17s, and I was like, that's actually a pretty fucking good side on paper. On
Yes.
paper. Like, if if the best version of each of those players showed up, they're the premiers, no doubt about it. Like, it's a. But mate, we've seen this time and time again. How many games do you think this season that you're going to see Latrell Mitchell, Cody Walker, David Fafita, Brandon Smith, and fucking all of the other supporting casts of South on the field all at the same time healthy? I'm going to like wager it'll be round 1 and then that will be it. Like,
I don't disagree, bro. Like, the thing is that, yes, it looks amazing on paper, and for that reason, it wouldn't surprise me if they blow away teams this year by 60 or 70. Genuinely, it will not. But their spine is dog shit. Jai Gray is a good fullback. He's a good fullback. I genuinely think, in terms of where his ceiling is when he's 28, 29, I don't think he's far off that now in his early 20s. Genuinely, I believe that. I don't think he possesses heaps of game-breaking ability. For mine, he is Heath Mason in a better system with better instincts. Cody Walker, I love Cody Walker. I think he's probably one of the best 5'8" we've seen in the last 15 years, and he's got one of the best grand final tries you'll ever see, but no one will ever talk about it because they lost in 2021. It's very similar to what Reece Walsh did last year. But he's 36 years old. He's not getting any younger. And I know, obviously, yes, he debuted when he was 28, but he was still playing New South Wales Cup. He was still doing pre-seasons with the Melbourne Storm. There is those questions. Ashton Ward looks a great little halfback. I do like the look of him. I think he's got potential. But my goodness, he'd be 56 kilos ringing wet. He looks like he's about to go to Service New South Wales to go for his ELS test. And I think he might fail it. But
feed him. Tell him.
Look, great instincts, good footy IQ, and I think that he's got potential. He works really hard, and there's a reason why he's been picked over Bud Sullivan. But I don't know. I don't think he's ready to lead a footy side around, especially one this experienced. And Brandon Smith is there and Captain Cocaine, and you spoke about him, but they got Bronson Garley starting in the 9 this week. Not very good. I'm going to leave.
Wait, where's Brandon?
Brandon Smith's got a calf issue.
Oh, there we go. I said it would be round 1 and round 1 only. It's not even going to be round 1.
Yeah.
They're going to their full strength side on the field 0 times this year.
Yeah.
0 times. Because it's not only about set aside the off-field drama. Like, I'm being a little bit of a pissant bringing that stuff up. Like, I should just wipe the slate clean and say, let's talk about footy. They're all injury prone.
Yeah.
The whole side is injury prone.
Well,
like,
Elliott's out too. So,
oh God, mate. Anyway, enough about South Sydney Rabbitohs. I want to give a congratulations to ex-Tiger Cooper Clark. What a rise for the young man, named to start tomorrow night off the bench for Melbourne in a 15 jersey. He will get minutes. They said he was 145 kilos when he first showed up to Flegg. That is a big, big, big lad. I did not realise we had this monster in our pathways. That's one that we are going to live to regret if he's getting picked for Melbourne this early.
I'm going to talk about this really quickly. And yes, absolutely congratulations to Cooper. I think it's been a meteoric rise. I will say that in that 1 year where he did play for us in Harold Matthews in 2023, it was, in terms of, if I look back on that side, I purely look at that tape and I look at the guys that I would have wanted to have kept or the ones that were the standouts. Cooper probably wasn't one of them. And obviously he's always had the body shape, and that's something that we don't do well. And that's, holding on to body shapes that are going to develop. And Cooper is a wonderful ball player for a player of his size. And I think he's going to do good things in Melbourne. But you compare it to some of those guys in those teams, like a guy like Maddox Fui and those sorts of guys in that team. And he was a little bit behind the development curve there compared to a guy like Maddox. And when we lost Maddox compared to Cooper, I was a little bit disappointed. But Cooper is, evidence of, getting out of a system and getting uncomfortable and going away from your family. He's a Southwestern Sydney boy, as is his brother Zach, and he went up to Queensland Cooper and he cut his teeth over there. And he's turned into a monster and a totally different player. And I know that the Melbourne Storm are obviously struggling at the moment for squad depth, and I think that's the worst side on paper they've named in a very long time. But there's no doubt in my mind, you look at that bench, it's still a strong bench. Cooper's got every right to be there amongst some pretty good company. Kamikamitha, Davey Mawali, and Tyron Wishart, who's probably the best 14 in the league alongside Connor Watson. It's gonna be cool to watch him go around. Obviously, another West Junior in and about the place. But
I was honestly surprised Penrith didn't put his brother on the bench. I thought there was a good chance that they were both going to get round one debuts. I don't think Zach's very far away at all.
yeah, no, I wouldn't think so either. And he's always been a point of difference. He's a player that we've always loved because he's such a good ball player, and he's a goal kicker. He's a bit of a throwback to the past in terms of how skillful he is. He just needed that, that tough edge and that ability to, you know, flourish in a good system. And I think he's got that at the Panthers. Another one I'm disappointed to see lose, but if these boys go on and do good things, then you can't really knock them. So anyway,
Don't we have a goal kicking forward in our team somewhere? Am I listening? I vaguely remember somebody.
I think Isaac Searle in the Harold Matts for the Magpies is a goal kicker. I think he's a back rower.
I was thinking somebody more like in the New South Wales Cup level.
Yeah, Isaac Searle's got the T for the Magpies. Yes,
That's pretty. Love a goal kicking forward. Love a goal kicking forward. Young forwards, what are you doing? Learn to kick. It's not hard. You just run up and kick. It's like, just do it. The age of the winger having to be the goal kicker just to get a fucking feed is over. Share the love. Learn to kick. Reece Martin, come on down.
Zachary Clark. Well, there you have it, everybody. Well, obviously, I acknowledge that this is a little bit of a different episode, a different flavour. We will not be looking back, although we might have Dan on at another time. We'll certainly be looking forward. First game of the year to preview and talk through next week. We'll have some team lists for New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flag. Until then, enjoy the round one without the West Tigers, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.